So the next time that you're experiencing the feeling of sadness or feelings that you don't want to feel, can you appreciate your ability to feel them? Can you appreciate your capacity to observe those feelings to arise? Can you look at it as if you were in a concert hall watching a famous musician produce beautiful sounds with their fingers on a beautiful instrument in front of you? Welcome to On Emergence, a podcast on what it takes to be a human being. My name is Sagen. I'm your host and a fellow human being. In this podcast, we'll look at the complex and sometimes complicated experience of being a human. Its multifaceted journey of always becoming, always emerging. You might have found yourself here if you've been asking yourself questions that you don't quite know the answers to. And also you may not know where to find the answers to those questions. In any case, I welcome you today. For today, we're going to talk a little bit and dedicate our time and attention to our old friend, sadness. Now, sadness is a difficult one to make friends with because sadness is often being pushed away because we associate sadness with something weak. We associate sadness with something that is difficult to experience, sadness that something that we need to be ashamed of, especially if it's a sadness over a situation where the other person, oftentimes the other person is involved, doesn't feel the sadness about, or we don't know how to feel the disappointment of the dream that we had not coming true. What I find useful in these circumstances is to remember that me as a human being, as a musical instrument. I don't know if you play guitar or not, but it's a very good analogy. If you play any other musical instrument, or if you can just call in into your mind that analogy of you yourself being that musical instrument. And you don't tend to blame the guitar. You don't tend to blame the piano for producing a sad chord, a sad-sounding minor chord. You appreciate the music. You appreciate the musician. And often you can also appreciate the musical instrument itself for being able to produce that beautiful chord. So that's an invitation for you to look at your sadness, at your disappointment as that minor chord, as that sad music that you as a musical instrument is able to produce. That's merely an invitation to appreciate yourself for you're able to strike the keys in such a way that produce something so beautiful and so profound that makes the entire audience, i.e. you, to stop and pause and to feel. Now that's personally how I tend to deal with my sadness. It helps me find the beauty in my ability to feel sad feelings. It helps me to find solace in the situations where I feel disappointed, where there are certain things that didn't go the way that I anticipate them. And there's sadness and sometimes tears, but I don't blame the musician for producing the sad sounds. I just appreciate the music that it managed to create for me. So the next time that you're experiencing the feeling of sadness or feelings that you don't want to feel, can you appreciate your ability to feel them? Can you appreciate your capacity to observe those feelings to arise? Can you look at it with curiosity? Can you look at it as if you were in a concert hall watching a famous musician produce beautiful sounds with their fingers on a beautiful instrument in front of you? If we stay on this analogy of a musician a little bit longer and a musical instrument a little bit longer, the thing is when we're trying to push away difficult feelings or sad feelings in this case, if we're trying to push away, what happens is that if those feelings are not heard, our bodies tend to try to make them louder. So that produces a kind of a deafening experience that suppressed anger or suppressed sadness is not heard, so it becomes louder and louder, and then your entire body gets involved. So this is where you find yourself in some of the numbing habits that you might have or unhealthy behavior. This is where you find yourself often angry, because anger oftentimes is unexpressed sadness. So this is where that sadness is not given space. Then the chords, the musician becomes louder and louder and louder. And then to the point where you're no longer, or it becomes a lot more difficult to appreciate the musician playing the instrument, is that You can't appreciate the music of your sadness because you're too distracted, you're too overwhelmed by the loudness of it. So think about that. Think about that suppressing that sadness. It's both striking the chord of the guitar and then instantaneously numbing the sound, instantaneously pressing on the strings, preventing them to vibrate. But can you strike the chord? Or if the chord has already been struck, can you enjoy the music that is coming out of it? Can you be present for the music? Because if you don't, that chord can only become louder in order for you to hear it, in order for you to learn how to appreciate it. I hope that this analogy is somewhat helpful to you. I know it has been to me in the situations where I felt disappointed, where I felt angry, where the feelings that were rising were difficult to experience. It is in those moments that I appreciated my capacity to feel them. I appreciated the musician and the musical instrument as well. As always, if you have any questions, any comments, any thoughts or feelings that this episode has stirred up in you, please feel free to share them. Always feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. The handle is On Emergence, and I oftentimes post a backstory for each episode on the website, onemergence.com. If you're tuning in to this episode on podcast platform, consider checking out YouTube channel and subscribing there. That is a zero-cost way to support this podcast. And if you're already watching it on YouTube, consider subscribing. Once again, thank you for your attention and for your time today. My name is Laura Sagen, and I'll see you once again on Tuesday next week.